I just wanted to quickly say happy spring and thank everyone for having some fun with us on a Friday night. I am Bianca Tatum, a senior at Holy Cross studying economics and co-chair for the Women in Business Club. As many of you know, we just celebrated our 15th annual conference this past fall, and then later had a great alumni speaker, Yolanda Raboon, class of 1990, earlier in the year. So we've been thrilled with the geographical reach of attendees around the world. The Women in Business Network is growing beyond the one-day annual conference, and we are absolutely thrilled to see so many of you here. Tonight's event is being recorded and it is hosted by the Women in Business Student Club. I want to encourage you all to submit questions through the chat that we will answer along the way or at the end. Some last minute announcements. We are also currently looking for one more co-chair for next year's Women in Business Club. So if there are any juniors participating in this event and are interested, please email us and tell us why you're interested in becoming the next co-chair. So now I want to pass it over to my fellow co-chair and friend Mia Maza, who will introduce our speaker, Tanya Baskin.
Hi everyone, it's Bianca Tatum, fellow co-chair. I'm also a senior econ Chinese double major, and I am so excited that Women in Business is hosting Tanya tonight. It is such an honor, so I'd love to give her an introduction now. So Tanya is currently the president of TBG Strategies and CEO of the Baskin Group. Tanya is a creative strategist and an accomplished marketing and brand building professional. She develops and implements strategically innovative solutions that help organizations and companies elevate their agendas and achieve their promise. Tanya provides the message strategy, tactile guidance, and structure needed for organizations and companies to reach their highest potential. Tanya is highly proficient at converting big ideas into strategic plans and solutions, whether it's through the development of an incisive marketing or communication approach to build their brand, or the execution of a new business strategy to increase revenue, penetrate markets, or develop strategic key partnerships. She works closely with each client to develop effective tailored solutions to improve their brand narratives and meet their business objectives. Currently, Tanya specializes in robust and challenging projects that allow her to use her talents to transform the brand, systems, or culture of an organization from the ground up. Serving as a marketing and communications strategist for institutions looking to transform their current brand perception and expand their impact, Tanya spearheads campaigns and initiatives that bring this to fruition. Through improved storytelling, messaging, and content development, Tanya is able to lead the University of the District of Columbia to secure an increase of 9.5% in funding to their base operating budget and an additional $70 million in capital funding from the District of Columbia, and subsequently improve the brand of the university. Prior to consulting, Tanya worked with major brands to create marketing campaigns that transform movements globally. Collaborating with Procter & Gamble, Tanya expanded the company's relationship with Special Olympics from US focused to include Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East, expanding the partnership from 2 million domestically to 8 million globally. Working with Coca-Cola, Tanya leveraged relationships to develop a strategic partnership between Special Olympics, FIFA, and the government of South Africa to establish the Special Olympics Unity Group, which is a unified athlete and celebrity soccer match during the World Cup festivities. The Special Olympics Africa Unity Group game has continued since 2010 as a major awareness and fundraising event for Special Olympics Africa. And while executive director at Trilogy International Partners, Tanya also successfully launched the first ever mobile money service in Haiti, a predominantly cash economy where most citizens remain unbanked. There, together with her team, Tanya registered more than 300,000 users with over 3 million financial transactions conducted via mobile phone within the first year. This groundbreaking project, which built a network of over 1,000 agents and merchants in more than 30 cities in Haiti, addressed a lack of formal banking infrastructure in the country. Women in Business is so excited and honored to be hosting you tonight, Tanya, and I know we're all so eager to have the opportunity to hear and learn from you. And that being said, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, and welcome everybody. I appreciate everybody showing up on a Friday night, and then this is the first, I don't know where you guys are in the universe, but I'm in DC, so this is the first day that we have had decent weather. It's literally 80 degrees outside, so anybody on the East Coast who's hanging out with me right now, thank you, and thank you for everybody else for for coming in. So I have some slides I prepared. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the power of purpose. Talk to you a little bit about just purpose in general and what brands do, and then talk about my work and purpose, and then probably share some information I think might be helpful for the group if you are looking for your purpose. Thank you for having me again. We're going to talk about the power of purpose. Uh, Tanya Baskin, class of 91. Happy to be here. I'm seeing so many familiar faces that I haven't got a chance to see in a while. So thank you all for joining us. And I'm excited to talk to you tonight. I figured I started with this. This is my historical residential footprint at Holy Cross, Milady, Wheeler, Carlin. And I underline Carlin because, I mean, underline Wheeler, because anybody who spent a year in Wheeler and got out of Holy Cross in 4 years deserves some kind of accolade or something. So, I mean, my GPA took a hit, but I still got it in 4 years. But I mean, it was, as I'm sure, I don't know if it's still that way, but Wheeler was a bad choice. However, I survived. Um, so tonight I'm going to talk to you guys about brands and purpose, purpose and action, what it looks like when you actually see a brand or a company actually live in their purpose, the work that I've done in purpose, and then a little bit about finding your purpose. The road to purpose. It's not this, what I'm going to talk about is not representative of all companies, right? So even some of the companies that I do talk about tonight they're not perfect, but there are aspects of the work that they do that is worth highlighting to show you what purpose looks like in action. This graphic that represents a powerful emotional connection, right? So right here, we're talking about what every organization does, how they do it, and why. And this is a method that they call the golden circle. And now the majority of businesses communicate by talking about the what and the how. And in some rare instances, they talk about the why, and they do it in that order. And every organization, particularly on the planet, they know what they do, and pretty much they know how they do it. But some organizations really are really special, and it sets them apart when they are able to express that why. When they are able to express that why, because they know that the why is a little bit, is not about making money. It's about purpose. It's about cause, and it's a belief. So why is the why is important? Because that why, it helps connect them to their target audience. It helps them make a connection that is beyond transactional. Their why is their purpose. Now, this is not true for every company, but for those that are sustainable and are typically have a unique place in the market, and there's some of these brands that you all hold near and dear to your heart, their why, their purpose is abundantly clear. They are able to articulate why they are in business and what they are solving for, right? Because I always ask, companies or organizations that I work with, what are you solving for, right? And why does it matter? And that matters because people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. I'll say that again. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Consumers and individuals are always looking for a connection to a greater cause, a greater belief. So they're interested in the why and not the what. For purpose-led brands, they see the return on this investment all the time in market performance. Brands with the purpose set on improving our quality of life outperform the stock market by 120%. Purpose-led brands have seen their valuation surge over 175% over the past 12 years versus a growth rate of just 70% for listless brands who are really uncertain of what role they play in the marketplace. And when you look at consumers, their support for purpose-driven brands, particularly over the last 2 to 3 years, when you look at all of the things that have been happening in the marketplace, whether it's the global pandemic, racial injustice, Me Too movement, they have a higher expectation of the role of companies in our society. But when you look at the support that they have for purpose-driven brands, 88% would buy products or services from that company. 85% would support that company in their community. 68% will work for that company, and 54% would invest in that company. But how does purpose happen, right? You don't wake up one day and have purpose. Even I don't care what organization you are, how big you are, how nimble you are, how long you've been around. It doesn't just sort of fall out the sky. It's a process, and it's very, very intentional. It's a combination of vision and core values. If you have a clear vision about your company, a clear vision about who you are, and you have core values that do not change, that stay and stand the test of time, you can easily ascend to having a higher purpose. Vision affects performance. There's a book out called Built to Last, and I don't know if some of you folks have read it. It's a book that I think anybody who goes to business school, you'll have to read. It's called Built to Last, Successful Habits of Visionary Companies. It's a book written by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras, and it outlines the results of a 6-year research project that they did exploring what leads to enduringly great companies, right? And in their book, Built to Last, they talk about they researched public companies in the United States over a 70-year period, and their data showed that visionary companies outperformed the market 15 times, right? Since then, they've released other books like Good to Great and Great by Choice, and that continues to build on this research. But for all intents and purposes, the research still holds up. So now we talk about how does business affect performance, right? So what else did they learn in their research? When they looked at these companies, 18 of them, 17 out of the 18 companies had a clear core ideology, clear core values, and very clear, well-known visions. Those companies they were like the HPs, the 3Ms, the Procter and Gambles, the Mercks, the Nordstroms, the Disneys, the Marriotts, and the Walmarts of the world. But it was always clear to see where they stood in the marketplace. They also discovered that these companies had ideologies, right? Not just almost like religious sort of tenets that they had, this religious fervor in the visionary of companies as they grew up that we did not see. If you look at the other companies in their verticals, you didn't see it with the comparison companies. For instance, you didn't see 3M's dedication to innovation in any other company. You didn't see P&G's commitment to product excellence in any of their comparison companies. No other retailer, Nordstrom's had any sort of like Nordstrom's had any of that ideal or heroic customer service, right? So you look at somebody like a 3M, and it's not just the tapes and the stickies. They have products in healthcare, transportation, electronics. They have over 100,000 patents. And they say at 3M, we are always in pursuit of solutions that make lives better. It's science applied to life. But if you look at somebody who is a comparison, in P&G, for example, and take Colgate Palmolive, this really doesn't compare. P&G's has a 123 billion market cap, and Colgate Palmolive is much smaller, 31 billion. Purpose-driven companies outperform time after time. Why? Because everything they have about them reflects their core values. These authentic values that a company truly believes in, the brand experience should support them and never contradict them. Everything internally and externally that happens in these organizations reflects their core values. They know what they are, they live by them, their employees live by them, their stakeholders live by them. They communicate them in the service and products that they develop and that they deliver to the marketplace consistently. Every institution, whether you're for profit or not, you have to sort of wrestle with this vexing question, what should change and what should not change? Obviously, innovation, digital societies, everything is happening. So you have to figure out what changes and what doesn't changes. It's a matter of you distinguishing your timeless core values from operating practices and cultural norms. Timeless core values never change. Operating practices and cultural norms should never stop changing, right? You always want to innovate. You always want to stay in the know and always be on the head of what's next for your stakeholders. A company's values and beliefs are a sort of a guiding set of principles that define their existence, and it guides their organizations. And they're the essential tenets of the organization, which require no external justification, right? We don't need to, no one outside tells us how we're going to do what we do inside. Our people value them, and it serves as that compass for us in terms of strategic decisions. As organizations' beliefs help to define what they stand for, they're independent of their current business environment and should be able to stand the test of time without change. These beliefs will help focus in on the ultimate goal, which is to help you define your purpose. When an organization has defined their purpose, they can withstand change, whether it's innovation, whether it's technology, whether it's a global pandemic, they will change. They can stand the change. You look at, I saw some information the other day on Nordstrom, and despite Macy's is closing, Sears is closing, JCPenney's is closing, they had an increase in online sales in 2020. No one had an increase in anything in 2020, but Nordstrom had an increase in online sales in 2020. So because they know, people know, they know them for their customer service. I don't know if you're a Nordstrom's fan or if you shop there, but if you have something, you don't like it, you take it back, no questions asked. and people stay with them. Customers stay loyal to them. They know that regardless whether they get it in the store, bricks and mortar, or if they get it online, they're going to get that type of service. Core values. An organization's core values and purpose, if they're properly conceived, remain fixed. Everything else, practices, strategies, structures, systems, policies, procedures, all that's up for change. So when I'm working with organizations to develop their purpose, and one of the questions I ask them, because it's really hard, they get into, they want to say, well, this is a goal, and this is a strategy and all that. And how do I know it's a core value? And you ask them and you say, if the market penalized us for holding this belief, would we keep it? If we believe in something so strongly and the market said, you know what, you're going to lose market share or you're going to lose customers, would you keep it? If the answer is no, then it's not a core belief. Because regardless of what the market would say, regardless of what your customers should say, you need to keep that core value if you believe in it. If you're willing to relinquish it, then you don't obviously believe in it. So when you're talking about a brand's purpose, it's not a goal or strategy, not tied to your product or service or market, not tied to revenue, profit, or wealth. It is timeless, and it really, really reflects your reason for being. Purpose in action. So if you really want to see some examples of purpose, you can look at some of the brands some of these brands I'm going to talk about now as examples of where there's great alignment with vision, core values come to play, and you see purpose in action. Particularly in these last few years, we've seen so much unrest and turmoil globally. Consumers have started to look at corporations for answers. You got to play a part. I'm giving you my money. I'm buying your service. I expect you to have a voice in a lot of these. So whether it was around social justice or COVID or Me Too, companies who were aligned and they had their meaning, they understood their purpose, they knew their purpose and they had a sense of core values, they were able to respond. Whether you agreed with their response or not, they knew where they stood in the midst of all of this and they didn't struggle. The ones that did not have clear purpose, did not have core values, they either made awful attempts to respond, inauthentic attempts to respond, or didn't say anything at all because they didn't know what to say. And I know there's a couple examples that we know people came out and did stuff and they just, you get the cancel culture now, you get the backlash. I think Pepsi was one of them when they had, I don't know who the little young lady was, and she decided to be in the middle of a riot and gives the officer a Pepsi. Bad idea, because that was just absolutely very inauthentic, right? But that's not their values. They have no purpose. They shouldn't have even spoken up or been a part of that conversation. Nike was one of the first big brands to respond to unrest in the US following on the murder of George Floyd in May 2020. And this is not the first time that Nike has voiced support for Black Lives Matter movement. But I like what they did in 2018 when they put out the carefully planned ad with Colin Kaepernick. This response in 2020 was an urgent call, not just for consumers, but also for companies to stand together in fighting racism. Ben & Jerry's pretty much, they own the purpose space as a brand. I mean, there isn't a company that really can even compare with them. They can never be accused of opportunistic campaigning or jumping on a bandwagon. The company has a long, very long history of activism. The brand has previously used its marketing to help migrants. They've launched campaigns to help change laws and allow asylum seekers to work. They've been very vocal in the Black Lives Matter movement for a number of years. In 2016, the company wrote an article about why Black Lives Matter. They produced a detailed piece on research outlining 7 ways we know systematic racism is real. If you go to their website, they're really unique in the sense that a lot of companies have one mission. They have 3. They have an economic mission, they have a social mission, and they have a product mission. So they're really clear about their purpose. And you see them show up in every sort of conversation because that is who they are, that is the brand, and that's what they represent. Patagonia is an example of how purpose can evolve. If you look at their original mission, they said, we build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and use business to inspire. And recently they changed that. We're in business to save our home planet. They changed it from the first mission to a bigger and bolder mission because there's a greater sense of urgency. They've been committed to this since 1985. They've always pledged 1% of their sales to the preservation and restoration of the natural environment. They have given away $90 million to grassroots environmental groups, making a difference in their local communities. They've encouraged other businesses to join their cause. And, to me, they personify purpose. They fought President Trump on his views on the environment. They were the only one of the only companies that announced when they were getting that tax cut for Trump, that was $10 million, that they donated their money to environmental causes. They came out a few years back with this campaign, "Don't buy this jacket," and because they were trying to figure out basically how to handle Black Friday and you know, not be contradictory in their stance as it relates to the environment. So they came out with this crazy campaign: "Don't buy this jacket." That's their jacket. What company tells you not to buy their product? And why is because everything they make, they believe takes something from the planet, and that something that you can't give that back. So each piece of Patagonia clothing, whether or not it's organic or you use recycled materials, it emits several times its weight in greenhouse gases and generates at least another half garment's worth of scrap, and draw down on copious amounts of fresh water that are now growing scarce everywhere in the planet. So they said to folks, "It's Black Friday. I know you want to go out, but don't buy our jacket," right? To me, that is purpose personified. Another unique example is USAA. I know you guys hear that commercial, USAA, all the time. It drives me nuts. But you hear it all the time. So it's important to note that their purpose is to facilitate the financial security of its members, right? And they're really tight. It's almost like a familial sort of sense of what they offer. And it's their members must be active military, veterans, related to one of the two. So in other words, their purpose is exclusive, and it cuts out millions of other potential customers, and they don't care. It's important because they're stating their purpose and using it in their communication. They're distilling it down in their audience to only to qualify leads and their members. And by being purpose driven, they're also being efficient. By knowing their purpose, they can lead fully into the purpose driven marketing to connect with those who believe what they believe and stand for what they stand for. Contrast to USAA's approach with like a Geico, and it's very transactional. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more in car insurance. That's it. There's no other connection to the consumer. Which, if you look at that, there's nothing wrong with that. It's smart, and they're coming as a low cost provider, but they can be replaced, because if Allstate offers you a cheaper or better deal, then you'll go with Allstate, right? There's no connection there. There's no purpose for why you would stay with Geico. Another example is Chipotle, because we can compare them to their alter ego, I guess, which is Taco Bell. And essentially, they both offer the same type of product, but they go about it in completely different ways. While Taco Bell's messaging focuses solely on price, right? And you can see here that the first message you get on their site is about a $5 chalupa box. Chipotle is more focused on sustainability, nutrition, transparency. So if you really look at the two menus, Chipotle literally has on their menu our values and nutrition on the main menu, where Taco Bell, it's nowhere to be found. I'm not trying to demonize a brand here. It's, folks have their choice, and they're very strategic about their messaging as well. Taco Bell is, they connect you to you through your wallet. That's it, right? But they're only focusing again on a transactional relationship, where Chipotle has taken the time, and they have absolutely built a tribe of loyal customers who stand for what they stand for, right? People who are interested in knowing where their food is sourced, right? And they demonstrate it by buying their food. And they're connecting with their customer on a deeper, more sustainable level. And that cuts across socio and economic lines, right? Because people are interested in the actual product, whether the price goes up or the price goes down. And if somebody offered the same thing, if it's not sustainable, Chipotle customers are staying with Chipotle. And then this campaign, I think this campaign, they talk about it, and if you look at it as a case study about empowerment. But I think the light bulb just sort of went off, and they realized that beauty is not defined by traditional European standards, and that their customers were diverse, multi-layered, and a complex group of women who needed to be represented appropriately in the products that they were buying and the products that they were selling. So they went they wanted to help women everywhere develop more of a positive relationship with the way they look, helping them realize their full potential. They launched this campaign way back in 2004. It's called the Campaign for Real Beauty. And at that time, it was absolutely revolutionary. And for the first time in these massive multi-million-dollar campaigns, you saw women of all shapes, colors, sizes being held up as real standards of beauty, right? Dove's inclusive brand purpose, it elevated Dove to be more than just a brand about soap, and more about a brand of empowerment. So my purpose in work. So transitioning, what I learned about building and working with large brands, and what I wanted to do was sort of, when I started to strike out on my own, was take that, right? Because you can sort of work for a P&G or a Coca-Cola and sell widgets and consumer packaged goods and sort of never move the needle, even if you are working with these companies on purpose. Um, but I wanted to pivot that work and the work I did with brands to smaller organizations that I knew that I would have a real role in them developing their purpose, which to me translates to impact. So my work sometimes is about purpose, but a lot of times it's not necessarily to develop the purpose, because some of these organizations actually know their purpose, right? Most of them already have a purpose. So what I do is I work with them to sort of help amplify it and identify the platforms on which that they can use it for the greatest impact, right? So I think I'm in a fortunate place that I get to choose my clients for the most part, not all the time, because I got to keep the lights on, but I can be selective about who I target, who I go after, and help them. And my work helps them to amplify and get their why correct and really get their purpose down packed. Um, when Mia read my bio, she talked about the work I did in Haiti. And this was working with Trilogy International Global Telecom. We were in Bolivia, DR, Haiti, and New Zealand. I was originally responsible for their marketing, but specifically trying to figure out how to align their CSR objectives with their business objectives and to build out their purpose, right? Because they were conscious as it related to CSR, but my focus was how to scale that impact. So while we were in Haiti, that company, it was not a large company, but we invested over $200 million in the country. We employed over 500 local staff, and we provided indirect employment to over 25,000 Haitians through what we call a micro enterprise venture. And what that is in Haiti, folks live a little, tell you a little bit about Haiti so this will make sense. It's one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. 59% of the population live off less than $2 a day. 25% of the population live off less than $1.25 a day, $1.25 a day. They have high illiteracy rates. Two-thirds of the population do not have formal jobs, and 50% of the children do not attend school. So that sort of paints a picture for you, right? So when we talk about these micro enterprise ventures where we have local entrepreneurs sell time and minute recharges, because while 85% of the population has a phone, no one gets a phone bill. No one gets a phone. It doesn't work that way. You go in the street and you get your recharge. And as a company there, we really make our money off for international long distance. We don't make our money off the calls here. So, today they can have a phone card for your company. Tomorrow they can have a phone card for another company. But we looked at the need for the mobile wallet, and it was post earthquake, and they had the big earthquake. And what we discovered is that there were two bank branches for every 100,000 people in Haiti. Two bank branches for every 100,000 people. So everybody was unbanked pretty much, right? Unless you were the privileged and then you could wire your money off. But the goal here was to focus on the unbanked and provide financial security and stability for many Haitians. So when I talked about the two-thirds of the population that didn't have formal jobs, that's because they're not going in anywhere and punching a clock, right? They're not sitting here saying, hey, I'm going in, but they're working on the street, they're making money. By creating this mobile wallet and creating this phone, we are banking the unbanked, because if you're a person on the side of the street and you're selling widgets or whatever it is, you can actually track how many you sold, how much money you brought in this week. You sold five, you made $20 this week, right? Typically you would not, you can't account for that, right? It's just a cash economy. But with the mobile wallet, you can. In addition to that, we had different platforms that we rolled out with it that allow you to not only show what transaction you made, but also show that you could save part of your money. And if you could save part of your money, then what else can you do? You can get credit. If you can get credit, then you can get a loan. If you can get a loan, then you can actually be a formal business, right? So it's really working about building the economy. Originally, the folks, when we talked about doing this project, they just wanted to do it to reduce churn, what we call as churn. Churn is when you lose a customer off the thing. But I thought there was a bigger picture here, and that we could actually do something. If you got your money on your phone, then you're not gonna change phones, right? Your money's on my phone. But it would bring an entire country into a formal banking economy. right? Which is needed, which is so needed right at this time. So that really 2/3 of the population that you say don't have formal jobs, technically they do, right? They just can't account for it. And they just can't really prove it. Another project we worked on in Haiti was this trilogy emergency response application. One of the first meetings I had when I got there on in country was with the Red Cross because they were doing a yeoman's job in terms of repairing the country. But they had a bone to pick with us because they weren't really happy that we were not letting them use our cell towers, because they would send out these messages to let people know a flood's coming, rain is coming, another tremor is coming, or whatever. And they had no way of just targeting folks to do that, right? To send those messages out. They sent message after message after message out, and it was one message and it went to everybody. So even if I'm not on the coast and you're talking about flooding today, I'm getting that message. Well, my guys who run my cell towers are like, look, they're clogging up the message. People don't answer their phone. They're not looking at it. We got to figure that out. But we came up with this solution that allowed them to send targeted messages to different geographies throughout the country, which means if you were getting needed a flood message, we could look and draw a circle around that, and that only the people who needed that message got it. Aid messages became more relevant, they became more action oriented, thus more effective, because also people were so used to getting messages, half the time they didn't read them. But now they were understanding that the messages came to them, they were actually tailored to them. It reduced the congestion on our network, and their response rate in terms of seeing people acknowledge the message and actually taking action went up threefold. We licensed this to the Red Cross. It was the first of its kind globally, and they still use that solution today around the globe for all of their disaster work. I left Trilogy and I was hired by a company called Greif. It's a B2B packaged goods company based in Columbus, Ohio. And I worked there it's a social innovation company founded by this Greif. And the original idea was to address, basically provide water backpacks to address disaster prone areas around the world. Um, they brought me on as CEO to sort of figure out how to take the business to scale. But when we started to looking at what the issue was, and I got in there and said, all right, it's about more than just a backpack, right? Even though our backpack was more efficient, more effective, less carbon footprint, we tested it transportation. And it was this awesome backpack. You put it on your back, it carries the water. You go get your water, you take it back, you bring it home, you hang it on a wall. And if you look at the little picture, the little spout comes up and it's actually a little faucet. You can get your water. So it allows you to store the water. You can also take out the liner, put it out in the sun, perform what they call SODIS, which is solar disinfectant. You can clean the liner and the water in it. So it helps with the waterborne illnesses. When I got in there and I started to learn about the water issue, it was more than just being able to transport and store water. When you look at it, who is doing all this work, right? It's the women, right? It's the women and it's the girls. It's about saving children from disease and all the health that risks that come with waterborne illnesses, but it's also reducing rape and violence toward women because women got to get up at the crack of dawn and go get the water, right? Or children got to go, young girls, because the boys get to go to school and girls don't, right? So it's about returning income generating hours to a woman's day. Women make the money, particularly in these villages, but she has to walk 5 miles every day. That's the average that they walk 5 miles to get water, right? So there's less that she can do to generate income, right? And it helped. We even thought about how we could take this model. And because Greif was a global company and they are B2B, focusing on a lot of their work is packaging. How do we create little micro sort of manufacturing centers in some of these villages throughout Africa where they can actually make the packs themselves, right? Make the packs themselves. So we wanted to just not look at it as a water backpack. We felt like this had an old, full ecosystem on villages in terms of health, education, women's safety, everything, financial security. I mean, so we went from providing just a water backpack to solving what we call was the Achilles heel of the global water crisis. It's more than just cleanly transporting water from the source and clearly storing it, but all of the sort of ripple effect you get around that, right? So we wanted to use the backpack. This is what it normally would look like, right? A 20-liter bucket filled with water weighs 48 pounds. And they're carrying two on their head, sometimes all kinds of different ways. And 200 million hours will be spent carrying water from source to home, often over long distance, mostly women and children. So this was really going to have a huge impact on women, children, girls specifically. Then the work I did with Special Olympics, when I joined them, we had basically had 1 million athletes, all in the U.S., and really didn't have a footprint outside of the U.S., right? And we wanted to grow our movement, double the number of athletes, but not inside the U.S. Really go outside the U.S. and really look at where can we have an impact. And if you look at our mission, when we started this, and this is still the mission, but we changed our purpose in a very, very big way after doing this work. The mission is very basic, providing year-round sports and training and athletic competition and Olympic type sports, children with intellectual disabilities, let them share their gifts, let them share their talents. When we decided to go outside of the US, we realized that it was a different sort of, we had to rethink the movement. We had to rethink the movement because the movement was real about sports. But when we went outside the US and saw the conditions of what a lot of folks with intellectual disabilities, how countries viewed them, how they dealt with them, how they were institutionalized and so forth, we really had to take a step back and say, how are we going to go about this? It's not about sport. I can't come talk to you about sport when some leaders of some countries actually told us that they did not have people with intellectual disabilities in their country. Like, we don't have that. I don't know why y'all got it, but we ain't got it. Or they say, what we're doing with them is fine, which is either institutionalized, locked up, tied away in horrid, horrid conditions. So we really have to figure out what are the things that we can do as an organization, that we can do as a movement that would change the perception, one of the athletes, but also change how we approach this. And we came up with things like healthy athletes, right? Because we knew a lot of the issues around persons with intellectual disabilities in foreign countries outside the US dealt with health, right? Not being able to get access to health. A lot of them couldn't go to school because they didn't have a health card. You don't have a health card, you can't go to school, but you can't take your child if you have an intellectual disability to a doctor because they won't see them. So we started things like healthy athletes, healthy communities, unified sports, which is tying a person without an intellectual disability with the intellectual disability so people can get a better understanding. And we sort of shifted from that basic mission to talking about a movement of inclusion, acceptance, a world where everyone belongs, and we're changing it through sport. So we really put a different lens on the work that we do. We went outside of the US, started in 2003 in Dublin, Ireland, 2005, Nagano, Japan, 2007, Shanghai, China, and really use that sort of our world games as a footprint to sort of really change the perception of people with intellectual disabilities on all those continents. And we went from 1 million to 2 million in 5 years. And that 1 million came strictly from outside the US. And then there's the work I'm doing now with HBCU. It's University of District of Columbia, which I really love this work. It's the only public institution in the nation's capital. So for all intents and purposes, what that means is that this school, the University of District of Columbia, which some of you probably have never heard of, is the state school, right? So we are the University of Maryland. We are the University of Virginia. For Virginia, we are the University of North Carolina. We are the state school for the District of Columbia. But you would not know that. You may start to hear about us now because we're changing that perception and we're working on that. But they sort of don't get treated that way, right? Largely probably because, in my opinion, they're HBCU, and that would be their state school. And there's people in the District of Columbia who probably would not want that to be their state school. So in 1995, there was an issue with the DC government. I don't know if you all pay attention, probably not, but DC government was in shambles and the DC Control Board took over. They cut the budget for the entire city in half. Since that time, they've restored all the institutions, right? That they've cut the budget, whether it was health, education, library, law enforcement, whatever. They cut it in half until the district could get stabilized. The one thing that they did not replenish the budget on was the University of the District of Columbia. When I came there on board in 2018, that was still the case. And while they had received some minor increases in the budget, they had not been restored to its previous state. And with the last increase being over 10 years ago. So we launched a campaign, and they were going down there every year asking for money, but we launched a campaign. And when you start to look at it, I said, well, what's the real issue here, right? The real issue is equity. It's not equity. We're not asking about a funding for the school. We're really asking for equity. When I looked at the data and the statistics, The average state university receives between 4 and 6%, between 4 and 6% of their state's budget. That's what they get. University of District of Columbia was getting 1.1% from the district. So it's equity. So I was like, we need to change the perspective. First of all, I think sometimes you can ask for things, sometimes you can demand it. Created a campaign called Equal Funding for UDC. And the only thing I talked about was that we only got 1.1%. I didn't care about anything else. That we get 1.1%. Everybody else gets between 4 and 6%. We organize the students, we educate, because people love sound bites, right? They love a sound bite. 1.1%. And even with all of the money that we were asking for, when we would be fully funded, we will only be up to 2%. So we were asking for 2%. So just really, it was astounding the fact that we couldn't get 2% from the district. Created a campaign, Equal Funding for UDC, rallied the students, right? Because I felt like if this is your university, you care, you guys, you want your 2%, right? Let's go down to the mayor's office. We show up at every budget forum. We did grassroots. We educated every ward. We went to every council member and said, why can't we have our 2%? If you look at that picture right there, that's actually Mayor Bowser. And that's our students and we bum rushed one of her budget forums, her public budget forums. And she had no choice but to take a picture with us. But we didn't get our 2%, but we got some money. We got some of our money. We ended up getting 146 million in funding total. Not quite where we want to be, but we're getting there. But we can move off that now. What it allowed us to do is have a voice, have our say, get what we truly deserve, get some of the equity we deserve, and move off this, fighting campaign, and then talk about what the campaign, what we really should be talking about, what the university really does offer, what their purpose really is. So we built off that success. Then I developed another campaign for them called Find Your Possible, that we sort of have launched. It really just changed the whole perception of the university within the District of Columbia. So those are some examples of my work and purpose. So I'll leave you with a few things. One, purpose is uncomfortable, right? So it's not comfortable to do this type of work. This is why you don't see a lot of companies jumping in that bandwagon, because you're going to have to make hard decisions. And when you're meeting a need in the world and involves bringing something good to people, there's always going to be trade-offs, right? But purpose must be discomforting. So when you set a purpose, you create a gap between aspiration and what's real, right? Where you want to be and what is really actually happening. And a purpose should make you feel that what you are doing is almost not enough, right? You got to keep ratcheting up, keep pushing the envelope. Both the insight about what to do and the motive to do it come from thinking about this gap. And you holding both the ideal and the reality in your mind at once. Forgetting one or the other reduces the discomfort, but it also removes the motivation to take action, right? So purpose is absolutely uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, to have conversations with leaders of corporations and countries about poor people 90 miles off the coast of Florida that live in extreme poverty with infant mortality and low life expectancy rates, right? It's uncomfortable to have those conversations that I had to have, talking to USAID, the State Department, Coca-Cola, and all those about why Haiti is in the state that it is, right? It is uncomfortable to travel around the world and see individuals with intellectual disabilities locked in cages or abandoned by their families. Those things, Special Olympics' purpose is uncomfortable. People don't want to see them coming sometimes, right? And it's uncomfortable to sit in the nation's capital, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and have to fight for equity for Black and brown students when white students don't even have to ask, right? So purpose is never going to be easy. It is always going to be uncomfortable. But purpose is necessary, right? Without purpose, nothing gets done. And you need purpose to create impact. You have to have purpose to create impact, because that's where you really move the needle. So if you guys are out there and you're thinking about finding your purpose, I always tell folks, you can have it within you too, right? So it doesn't have to be about a company or an organization. It can be how you live your life. If you want to find your purpose, I tell people, look, here are 4 questions I suggest you ask yourself. What makes you come alive? We all have something in our lives that make us feel alive, something that brings us joy, fulfillment, and excitement. And this is a great way to uncover your purpose. What are your innate strengths? You are naturally great at some things. And I think you should just lean into your strengths and find a way to use them that can help impact others, right? We all have our gifts. And where do you add the greatest value? This is more of the follow up to that question, second question, right? Most people have a few strengths, but which ones could produce the greatest value? Which ones do you think that, are in need, are in demand, right? And then the fourth thing I ask is, how will you measure your life? Begin with the end in mind. It's a powerful exercise. I don't know if you all are fans of Stephen Covey, right? But stop and thinking about how and who you want to be, how you want to be remembered, as will help you better define how you will measure your life. And take a peek at your core values, right? Because your core values are going to be what sustain you. These are the things that don't change. These are your beliefs, right? They should be timeless. They don't require any external justification. They should have intrinsic value and they should be important. And then you can take the same question that I said that if you can ask a corporation, right? So all the exercises I go through with corporations, I can have that same exercise with an individual, right? If Ask yourself, if the world were to penalize you for holding that belief or whatever that belief is for you, would you keep it? Would you keep it? And if the answer is no, then it's not a core belief. It's not something that you should align with or build your purpose on because it will not last. It is not sustainable. So my definition of purpose is just really just knowing who you are and what you stand for. At the end of the day, it is who you are and what you stand for. I think all of us can resonate with this as students, or alumni of Holy Cross. For many of us, it was the mission of the school that attracted you to the Holy Cross, right? The call to work together, to be sensitive to one another, and to serve others, both on campus and in the world, right? So what you do with your purpose is up to you. I believe purpose is personal. It doesn't have to be on a global scale. It can be something that is important to you, your neighborhood, or your community, or even your family. Remember, it's not a strategy, not a goal. It's not tied to a job or a title. So it doesn't matter what you're doing or where your stake is in life. Finding your purpose, it doesn't have to be anything tied to a title or a job, nothing related to it at all. It's not tied to revenue. It's not tied to profit or wealth. It's timeless and it reflects your reason for being. People arrive at their purpose in many different ways, and most of the times that path it's not straight. So I please understand that you're not going to wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, this is my purpose, I'm off and running. It's going to be a rough and jagged road, right? But purpose can evolve and it can change. So it's almost like you're excavating and getting to the heart of what we are all really good at. And I believe that we all have a gift and a talent that we are all born with. And I think it is our duty, it's absolutely our duty and our mission to discover this talent and magnify it so that we can align with our true purpose. So I encourage you, be patient with yourself as you sort of explore what it is that you should be doing, right? But it will come. Now I'm going to close with this one. Remember that purpose is a journey. And unlike most journeys, when you are living in or fulfilling your purpose, you're always a bit uncomfortable, right? So it is really about knowing who you are and knowing what you stand for. So I think that I put Stacey Abrams up here because if Stacey Abrams' purpose was just to be governor of Georgia, if she just wanted the job or the title, Lord help us for where we would be right now. She, to me, is the epitome of purpose. So let's go get uncomfortable. Thank you.
That was amazing, Tanya. I just wanted to open up the floor for any questions. And I think the first one is from Yolanda. She said the purpose is uncomfortable. And if you could talk about whether comfort in purpose is a non-productive state of mind, or is it possible to enjoy the discomfort?
I think you enjoy the discomfort because I think there's that gap when you feel like what it is that you're supposed to be doing, you're uncomfortable because its purpose is almost unattainable. One of the things they talked about in the book that I reference is that company's purpose should be able to last for 100 years, right? Because you can never get to it, right? Built to last. In the book Built to Last, it said your purpose can be 100 years. You can have the same purpose and you'll never get to it because it's supposed to be that big and it's supposed to be that incredible and that aspirational that you can't get to it. So yeah, you're going to always feel uncomfortable, but you should always be moving the needle for it.
That's great. I actually had a question, just while people are sending any other questions in the chat. So something I had for you. So when you're helping a company improve their stakeholder narrative, what do you think is the most difficult part of that process or most difficult aspect of trying to identify if that company is purpose driven or not?
Well, you can tell. I mean, because you can see by what it is that they're doing, how they're operating, how the people are showing up, what are their practices internally and externally. Internally is most important, right? Who are they hiring? What are their mission? If purpose is done right, and the core values are done properly, and the vision is clear, you could come in from planet Pluto and landing on a company, and you might not know exactly what it is in terms of word for word, but you'll feel it and you know it, right? Because it's a culture, it's all encompassing, and it captures everything. It's everybody is living and breathing it. The Marriotts of the world. You know that. You know what they are about. You know what the Nordstroms are about. You know what you get that sense of feeling. So it's not hard to sort of excavate it. But when there isn't there, right? Then there's that. It's just jointed, and there's no connectivity. So then you have to figure out where are we missing? What are we not missing? So we don't have a good employee base. There's a problem there. We don't understand our stakeholders. There's a problem there. What is the source of that? Are we communicating? Are we clear about who we are? Right? Because then maybe we're bringing in the wrong people or we're doing the wrong things because we don't even know who we are as an organization. But if you're clear about you are, that's it's very easy to sort of cut away the clutter.
I think we had one more message in the chat. Tanya, before you leave, could you please name 3 of your favorite books or authors you consider great for continued personal growth, finding your purpose, both personal and or professional?
I have to think about that. Can I email y'all?
Yes.
I'll email that out. I have a couple, but let me put some thought into that.
Okay.
I want to make sure I get some good women authors.
Tanya, can you give just a couple nuggets for our current students in terms of what they can do during their 4 years at Holy Cross, or however long it takes for them to accomplish that goal, in terms of getting ready to embrace or acknowledge or articulate what that purpose-driven life could look like?
Well, it's hard, right? Because you're young, and I think that it's going to be it's going to change. So if I'm thinking about myself, right, and my journey through purpose, it changed a million times, right? It changed depending on what was going on in my life. When I first came to Holy Cross, my purpose was to graduate, right? I was an absolute fish out of water. I came from an all Black inner city public school, and I felt I was ill prepared. So my sole purpose was to get out of Holy Cross. And then plot twist, I got pregnant my senior year, had a daughter. So then, hey, my purpose definitely became being a mother, right? So I think it changes. But I think the one thing that should not change is what do you believe in, right? Your core beliefs, who you are, and what you stand for, right? Because none of that ever changed. Me as Tanya, as who I am and what I believe in, what I stood for, the things that were important to me, never changed, regardless of the circumstances of my life. And they change. What changes how I showed up, but who I was as a person doesn't. So I think you have to start to have those conversations with yourself now, right? Be honest about who you are, what's important to you, even if it's not popular, even if it's not, you don't look for external validation. Figure out what is important to you, what matters to you, and what makes you happy, right? What do you get excited about, right? I think a lot of us graduate college and we have this sort of destined sort of thought in our mind that we need to sort of check these boxes, do this by 30, do this by 35, only to get to 40 and realize you shouldn't have did none of that stuff in the first place, right? So if you have these conversations right now with yourself, I think you'd be a lot better off just being honest about where you want to go, what makes you happy, and where you feel your talents and gifts will best serve you.
Thanks. Phenomenal presentation. And what comes through for me is the authenticity. It's obvious how passionate you are about the work that you do. And so I am certain that that's what translates to being so successful. And so my question for you in the work that you've done is, what could you help us to understand about why authenticity is so important? You made so many comments about it and they really resonated. Spoke to me a lot about the companies that I try to do business with and how important that is. And so I know it's certainly something all of us could take home from this message. But what I notice mostly is your authenticity. So clearly that must be the trigger.
Right. Well, I just think that you can try to fake it, but it will always catch up to you. Right. And even you can take COVID, for example, just if you think about this last year that we've had with COVID and the way some organizations chose to respond and the way some others came out, right? And some immediately said, hey, this is what we're going to do. Just look at the CEOs and what their responses were. The CEO of Marriott, right? The CEO of Airbnb, what their responses were, how they handled their employees that they had to lay off. All of that was dealt with authenticity and integrity because that is who they are. And there were some that just absolutely botched it, right? Because regardless of what you were saying as a brand, when it came down to it, when the rubber met the road and you really had to show up, you didn't know how to show up because it wasn't who you were. So those companies who did not know who they were or were not being authentic, they failed miserably. They sent out terrible memos. The people came to work, didn't have jobs. They just didn't handle it with any compassion, any care, any authenticity, right? Any empathy. No empathy. They weren't able to empathize, right? And it showed up. It showed up, and bad choices of laying people off, but giving people bonuses. I mean, you had companies doing that. We're laying people off, but we're going to give people a bonus. It makes no sense. So it will catch up to you. There's no way to fake it, right? Either you are real and you are authentic and you truly believe in what it is that you're doing, or you don't.
I had a question. What has been your favorite company to work with or an experience that stood out to you the most in your career?
The work that I loved the most was the work I did in Haiti because I actually loved it so much. I lived there for a while, right? So I loved that work. Um, the If it's a company, it's the work that I did around Special Olympics and working with the changing the perception of how the Coca-Colas and the P&Gs of the world saw us, dealt with us, and worked with us, right? When I first started working with them, we were getting all of our money from the foundation. And we were getting $500,000, I think, from Coca-Cola. And P&G only gave us, the only project they did with us was the what do you call it? The brand saver, which is that coupon that you get in the Sunday paper with the coupons in it. And there's one they would do one every month a year that they would dedicate to Special Olympics. And those coupons, we get 1 cent from every coupon. Now, maybe still got $1 million, but that's one, other people's money, right? They actually gave us nothing. And two is just, they use our athletes in this brand saver, and they didn't see our value. They didn't see the value that we brought. They didn't understand that, we were more than just what they had positioned us as, and shifting that position to taking that Coca-Cola relationship to saying, all right, we're not foundation. I know I'm not the Olympics, but I need to be in the property section with your Olympics. And I need to do cause related marketing like your Olympics because of the purpose that we have, we bring value to your brand, and convincing them of that, showing them what our purpose was as an organization and showing them that there's value, and changing that relationship from getting $500,000 a year to getting millions a year through cause related marketing, through the growth that we do in other countries, through the change in the agreement, right? I renegotiated an agreement that had never been negotiated since 1968 when they gave us the first dollar with Eunice Kennedy Shriver, right? That's big work to me. P&G, the same thing, taking that from being on the brand saver and getting our little penny, just a penny from every coupon, to making sure that we activated that relationship in Latin America, MENA, Africa, and getting and being part of the P&G Families campaign that they do in the Olympics, right? and getting multiple millions of dollars because they saw our value. So that work with those types of companies and taking them and transforming how they saw that movement and that global organization is some of the best work that the work I enjoyed the most.
There's one more question from the chat. What are some practices you do daily to make sure you are working in your purpose?
That's good. Geez. Well, I was a runner. Then my hip just acted up a couple of weeks ago. So I don't know. Hopefully it has calmed down and I can get back to it. But I work out in the morning because running and working out, I try to get up in the morning and do that. My friends on here know that I'm an early riser. It helps me collect myself and get my day right and understand what it is that I'm supposed to be doing and remind me of why I'm doing it, right? Remind me of why I'm getting up to go to this meeting. So I'm a exerciser, runner, or before COVID shut us down, I do hot yoga in the morning.
That's great. We have one more. With regard to your obvious brilliance and most importantly, you being a stellar woman in business, I'll leave that out because we're on recording here. How are you received by those in C-suites in the States and also abroad?
Well, that's a good question. C-suites are okay now sometimes, and it's okay. Sometimes it depends on the organization outside of the US. That's a whole nother ball game, particularly in Asia. It was interesting, right? And in some of these Middle Eastern countries, the cultures and the practices, you be in a meeting and they're like, and I'm sitting right here in front of you and they be like, so what are we going to do about so-and-so? I'm like, hey, no, me, I'm the one, talk to me. It's me. I call the meeting. Why are you talking to them? I call the meeting. So you get a lot of that and you just got to deal with it, right? Because you can't go over there and, as my mama would say, show your tail. You have to sort of deal with it and understand it. Some of it was cultural. I learned a lot working in Asia, spent a lot of time in Shanghai, and that they're very structured. So even if I'm the most senior person here representing whatever organization I'm representing, I can only talk to the most senior person as it relates to my level, right? So if I'm a VP, I could never talk to the president. The meetings are arranged. I have to talk to the VP. That VP then goes talk to the president. President tells him, he comes back and tells me. I would never have a conversation talking to. So you learn a lot. It's interesting. I think they not used to seeing a woman, but definitely not used to seeing a woman of color, particularly in, Dubai and other places I went like that. But, you adjust.
Mia, I have to say to you, this is Holy Cross. The word you skipped over is in the Bible. Come on.
You're right. I didn't want to catch any heat from our committee members once they post this on the Facebook page. Like, come on, you're a person on the page. No, this is just us. I wouldn't.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. We are all our own personal brand, and I'm not sure if everyone on the call is in business. I wouldn't consider myself necessarily a businesswoman on any large scale at all, but Tanya, when you're talking to people, not only in the big buildings, but in your personal life, and you see someone veering away from their core values and their purpose, how do you redirect them and get them back on track?
Oh, that's interesting. I do have a lot of conversations sort of in that space. And I just have to remind people, right? I think we all need reminders because we all veer, right? And one thing one point I hope I brought across is that purpose is a journey and it's not a straight shot. And it ebbs and flows, right? And we all do get distracted, right? But I think with anything, it's a ripple effect. So when you sort of move away from your purpose, right, then other things start to sort of manifest. And it's a ripple effect. So you can remind people that, this is not happening because you're not doing why, right? How do you feel? Well, that you don't feel a certain way because you're not in your element, right? What brings you joy, right? You're not happy because there's something that you're not doing. There's something that you're not living. So you can just gently remind people and like say, hey, well, when you were doing X, you didn't have that issue. You know, when I met you 6 months ago when you were doing why, that didn't seem to be a problem. Why is it a problem now? Maybe you need to get back to doing why, right? So it's a gentle reminder to people because sometimes we do get distracted by the bright and shiny. Sometimes we do just say, you know, maybe I'm supposed to be doing something else, right? Because you don't have, you know, somebody reinforcing certain things to you and you want to explore. But you know, you can have that, and then you can just bring them back, right? What remind them of what makes them happy, what makes you want to get out of the bed in the morning, right? Good to see you too.
Well
Okay.
done.
Well,
Well done.
if nobody has any further questions, I think we can close it up. This has been amazing, Tanya. I know we're all so grateful and honored to have heard from you and learned so much about purpose and finding our purpose and knowing that it's a journey and timeless and not a strategy. I've learned a ton and just so grateful to have had you. And we'll look forward to that email about your book authors.
My book, yeah, I'll go out with a couple. All right, no worries, no worries. Thank you guys for having me. Go get uncomfortable.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.